S&P continues to build the flag. Nasdaq sold off. Russell 2000 small caps confirmed. We're going to talk about what sectors are breaking out, which names are rolling, why GameStop is imploding after hours. We're going to discuss some of the large mega caps and what happened today, specifically this rolling over formation. We can see this in a couple names, and we're going to address why it's happening and what we can do about it. I also want to go through 8 names that Goldman Sachs lists as its top AI plays. We have a lot to get over, so let's just get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back. So I just want to go through a couple things here with the levels that we talk about. So we went through these levels the other day, and we went through them in the pre-market live. Okay, so we're really at that 42, 45 level as major support. Now, there's some developments today that we're not going to go over. I want to talk about yesterday's video, and I want to talk about what we went over as well the previous day. As always, subscribe to this channel, click all notifications, specifically if what you want to know about is actionable intel for the next day to make more informed decisions. So here's the issue that I see right now with the Nasdaq. Now, see how your RSI is right here? See how it's lower? That does not make me feel like I need to be rushing into this. That usually means that the magnitude of the move is going to decline. Well, if the magnitude of the move is going to decline, the chances of us just simply going up from there are not ideal. And now we're below 50, so I don't really want to be here and be getting involved. What you'll note is the big moves that happen in the ES, or really in anything, is once you start getting over that 50, then you start seeing the potential for that move. And I think it's an important distinction because once you understand what these indicators are, RSI in particular, it determines the magnitude of the move. If you're down here, it's telling you that the magnitude of the move is going to be less, not greater. Simple enough, right? So if we're starting to take out these lower lows and we're in line, do I see a need to panic that I have to get in? Not really, but what we're seeing is rotation. And we might want to be panicking a little bit to get in the right sectors. And we're going to talk about that tonight. But before we do, I think it's really important to just kind of look at where we are and just understand that, okay, we're holding this 42.74, and let's say that cracks. Let's just say tomorrow that cracks, which it very well could, right? And you're then going to just want to watch this 42.45, and then if that breaks, you're going to want to watch how we respond back at this level. Do we go here and retest? Do we go back to 43.05? Okay, these are the things that you're going to want to pay attention to. And at the same time, I want to see where the RSI is when all this is happening. So really right now, we're kind of wedged in here, and I don't see a reason that we should really be worried or concerned about the ES, the S&P future. Now, we talked about this yesterday, and a couple things. Number one, when we're talking about this AI play and this going on for a period of time, and there was a quote by Stanley Druckenmiller today on NVDA. His comment essentially was, I'm not looking at AI plays for 10 months. I'm looking out 2 to 3 years. I would strongly suggest that you consider extending your time frame on how this is going to play out. You're going to have these pullbacks, okay? And that's all today was a pullback. This is not a, quote, crash. You were down to levels that you saw last Thursday, right? 72 hours ago of trading, you were right there. So I think that is a little delusional if like today crushed you. Right. And I think that people need to set their processes in place. And we're going to talk about that in process. We're probably going to do a video on it. Comment below if you'd like to see a video on process. I've got a couple that I really want to do, but I'm looking at this. You see this DTL? I mean, if this was Thursday and you were here, you'd be doing cartwheels. It's Wednesday and you're down because you bought up here and now you're not happy. And therefore the AI craze has to be over, right? You know, when they're talking about this AI craze or this AI theme, they're talking about a decade, and we're looking at a Wednesday. All right, so we need to keep this in perspective, right? We need to lengthen our time horizon on how this is going to play out. So at least that's what I'm doing. Obviously, anyone can do what they want. If you want to day trade around this, that's fine. We do it all day long. But that doesn't mean that the theme is going to change. So you can see the crack right here. I mean, that was it. There was very little to do after that on the Nasdaq. When you have a long red nasty bar like this, right, it means one thing, just stay out of the way. You could try and catch the bounce and maybe you'll get lucky. I tried a couple bounces today, but they really didn't hold. They really didn't work. And even though we did see some holding in here, what did work was just following the process and selling this morning. We trimmed a lot of things this morning, and it was pretty obvious as to why. I'm going to show you a couple reasons as to how you can do this for yourself. But if you look at this 14.3 level where you're at right now, Here come the 14,250. This is the level we talked about. We talked about it in the pre-market live, the daily we do every single day, and you can see how we acted. 14,675, and then you're coming across, and then going from there. So, and then you come across here, and you can get to 14. If you think you can't get to 14, I mean, I just want to be blunt. You're wrong. You absolutely can get to 14. Now, I don't know if you're going to do this, come back up and test or not, and then break 14. I don't know if you're ever going to see 14 again, right? And let's just be very clear about it. From where we're at now to 14 is 2.5%. Okay, so then the Nasdaq would only be up 25% on the year. Okay, so let's keep this in perspective as to what it is. And another thing, and the reason I have RSI in tonight, and just to go over this before we start drilling into some of these names, okay, the RSI is a great indicator. And I use it to just determine where I'm at in the food chain. In other words, am I a little too frothy? And you can see that right in here. We got a little too frothy. Am I a little too oversold? Are people a little too aggressive with their selling at this time? Mind you, I'm not talking about the change in trend. I'm talking more of a reversion to a mean kind of move, right? So then you're down here, and the velocity is, or the magnitude is only going to go so far down. You can't have zero magnitude, right? And theoretically, I guess you could, and you can't have 100 magnitude. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So if you think about it from that perspective, and you look at these little red cycles and green cycles, like that didn't tell you that you were going to peak. That's not what this said. What it said was we're pretty high up in here, and that we're probably going to hit a point where we're going to slow down or drop. And then we slowed down, and then we popped over. And now this made life very easy right here, right? Because then all we had was this higher high. And I mean, it doesn't get any better for us that love divergences. And then you have that higher low. Go back to the video from May 27th, and you'll see what we were actually selling into this, right? We were actually selling into this on that Saturday because of the Bollinger Bands. And this was kind of a tell the way it was setting up. I mean, again, this can only go so high. Okay, so what does that do for you now, and how can you benefit from what I'm saying tomorrow? So instead of going back and going through months, let's just take May, and let's look at the Nasdaq and just see every time we're below 30 or touch 30, what does that do? So I did a whole video on this on RSI. It's one of the first videos I ever did, probably a year and a half ago. It's still worth watching. It's out there. It's definitely will explain everything. It's just that now I understand how to do video quality a little bit better for obvious reasons. I guess in a year from now, I'll be better at it again, but nonetheless. And I think the mic should sound pretty good tonight. And I'm working on finalizing the one room where this will be set up. So we'll see. Anyway, see these levels? So you hit a point and you're looking at this going, okay, is that something I want to pay attention to? I would pay attention to it. I mean, if I bought every single time that we are up and then we break, up and then break, I mean, what'd I do? I got stopped out twice at a loss. How'd I do this time? How about this time? This time, right? See where I'm going with this? So when you start looking at the odds of this, do you want to be shorting here? Go for it. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Go for it. It can always get worse, right? But when you start looking at an hourly 17 or 18, to me, it's the equivalent of starting to look at this at like at an 85 or an 87. Like you get to a point with it where how low is that going to go? And that doesn't mean that we're going to take out the highs, but it just means that we might revert. And well, it means that we will revert. I should put it that way. Should 14 break, you're starting to head to this 13.6 level. We'll go from there. Is that possible? Absolutely. That is your neckline. That is your neckline. You could absolutely get to that and retest that. And that would not change my thesis at all on this AI play. What it would do is present huge opportunity for us to get in certain names even cheaper. Now, IWM was something that's been battling for a long time, and we're starting to see some things down here. We started to see some rotation into the banks. And what you're starting to see is you're just seeing a clear breakout right in here. It doesn't really get more obvious than that. I marked off a couple key levels and how that 169, 170 level was set up. And just drop in the 200 so you can see what's going on and how we're flipping above it. Now, we're straight lining and we flipped above it a couple times and did nothing. So I'm not putting a lot into that, right? But what I am putting into is what's starting to happen. And let's talk about that. What is starting to happen? Well, AEHR AEHR, which is a semiconductor name, right? We had an all-time high today, I believe. We certainly hit a new high on this way around. So today we hit an all-time high. So what's happening? Rotation, 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 okay? It's going to be like this for years. Again, we talked about this yesterday. There's no backstop. If there's no backstop and the Fed's not out there buying and they're not buying bonds, then you're going to have true demand and supply to some extent. That's something that we have to take into account. And the volatility is great. I love the volatility. You just have to make sure that you get out of the way. So I would start looking at these smaller guys that are in semiconductors. Now, that doesn't mean that they're just going to rally because you're already over here. But if they pull back, we might want to start looking at these. This is kind of crazy. This is hitting a high today. It's in the semiconductor space, and it's something we have to pay attention to. Well, what else is hitting highs or starting to break out? And now here we are. We talked about this in the newsletter. If you don't get the newsletter, link in description. I would suggest you get it, and it is free. So, and coming across right here. Now, see how we're going straight across, and then we break out, and then we are heading up, okay? That is something that I think that we really need to pay attention to. I have positions in these regionals. I've been pretty clear about that, pretty vocal about it. Whether or not you want to play them, that's entirely up to you, but that's going to segue us into our next sector. The regionals are moving. The banks are starting to move. This was our level, which we had to see if we were going to break or not. And we are clearly not going to break. So that's definitely something that we're going to pay attention to here. Now, if the XLF can hold and the XLE, maybe they're going to bounce here now, that's not really something I'm overly interested in. I think it's great that we held this level. But I mean, to me, this is really setting up, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So you look at the energy from here, right? Do I really want to be this? Do I really want to be getting involved like right here into all this? Probably not. I mean, it's probably not my ideal trade. And then if you take a look up here and you see how this is going, I don't really see a need at all to do anything to feel the need that I have to be in that. There's nothing about that is screaming to me. So I like the financials, and the financials would be a place that I would focus on. But other than that, I don't really see a push there. Now, we should also talk about this because the S&P and stocks are still above the 50 on the S&P. Now, you're going to see the Nasdaq, obviously that's going to wind up dropping today down from 69 to 73 of stocks above. But if you take a look at the S&P, very little's changed. It's actually strengthening, right? So that tells you about the breadth. And what you're seeing is you're seeing diversification. So people are going back and they're buying the JP Morgan. We had a bunch of people today talking about the IEP and the trading community. And all of a sudden, maybe these people are realizing that they're short something that pays $2 a quarter, and they're actually going to have to pay the $2 because once people got that dividend, it moved up, which means if you were short, you just paid that dividend. And now people, maybe they're catching on to, what they actually are short. I'm not really sure on that or not. Now, coming across on this, if you're looking at this, just watch 28, 29. If you get above that neckline, you're probably going to push. This positive divergence pretty much tells you everything you need to know about it, right? I mean, you got to a 4, okay? And that's what I'm saying. You can't just buy because of that, but you start looking at this kind of stuff, and it's kind of silly how low it was done. Now, if there's a news event on this, it could absolutely clobber you, just like any news event can clobber any stock. GME, for example, 2077. All right, okay, so we're losing a CEO, we're getting a new CEO, and we missed on earnings and revenue. I'm going to save you a lot of time. That's what happened. So we missed. Okay, we're not really giving great guidance, and we got rid of the CEO, and we got a new CEO. And the stock's getting absolutely hammered because of that. Do with that what you will. I think we all know that this was just, a huge spec play, and that just a matter of time before it came home to roost. And it looks like tonight might be that night where people are going to finally throw in the towel. But we have a lot to go over here. So we know financials are moving. We know that there are names that we should be paying attention to. Now, if there's an interest in this, I can do a long form video of this on Saturday of just the AI names. But there's a total of about 20 names that Goldman is putting in a basket, and they are saying that they are the top names. I just want to review them because they are the ones that I picked or some of the leading names out there, some of the biggest names. And I think we should just review these charts, and I think it's a good use of our time. So if we come here and we just clean this all off, take a look at Amazon, you see how this is rolling. People are like, well, what does Amazon have to do with AI? The servers I can get more into it over the weekend. Again, if you're trying to connect all these dots and you want to go over it, it's definitely something that we can do. Just comment below and I'll work on it. But it might be a better thing to do. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that and the weekly game plan because it's a lot. You can see it just came right back to your neckline. Now, are you going to break that neckline? I have no idea. I think you might hold, but I don't know that. Now, it's very rare that you have a long, red, nasty bar like that down and that you don't have a lower low because everybody holds on and hopes, right? And then we all know what happens to hope, right? It doesn't really work out. Hope is not a strategy. So you want to watch this, but this is not something that should make you feel great today. And when I looked at Microsoft, which is also second on that list, you can see how we're rolling. And I was asked about this today. Is this something that you want to get into? No. When you start to do this, you need to get out of the way. Now, for me, the other thing is if I take this mark right here and I take this mark right here, okay, that is a negative divergence on the RSI, and I just crossed 70. Candidly, that's a clear sell signal to me, right? Like if this wasn't Microsoft and I wanted to short, I would be shorting that. Right, I would literally, I'll tell you exactly how I would do it too. I would go through these names and I'd start going and saying, okay, which ones are breaking the 22? And I'd start looking and saying, okay, if that breaks the 22, it's on. I'm going to short it. That's kind of how I would start setting these up because that's what I use. It's one of the processes I use. But I'm starting to look at this and going, you might not want to be, you might not want to be long this right now. And you might want to be really careful. Now, does that mean that Microsoft is going to lose its dominance in the AI space? No, it doesn't mean that. If you're in the community, you already know we paid $305 for this and we blew it out up here at like $330. So we made 25 points and change. And now it sets back up again. We let them set back up and then we get an in again and we find another spot. Same thing with Google, which is number 3 on their list. We added this right after that conference call repeatedly into it when Loeb and Ackman were building multi-billion-dollar positions in this. Do you think they're trimming into this? Do you think they gave up on AI after May 10th to date and it's not even 30 days? That's why I keep telling people you need to extend your time frames. You're going to look back in 2 to 3 years on some of these AI names, and I think people are going to be pretty impressed with where they are, some of them. And some will go by the wayside, just the way that it is. But this was their number 3 idea. I get it. I understand it. I think it makes perfect sense, quite frankly. But you're at a level right here where you're cracking, and now you have to pay attention. Now, RSI is not as bad. You're at a major resistance, so I don't know that it's going to be as bad as Microsoft. If I had to tell you which one looks worse, Microsoft looks worse. NVDA, I have a diamond up here, and we cracked. I mean, there's very little to say, and I want to walk through something here. Not only for everyone, but also I heard a couple people in the community, and we'll probably cover this in the educational class this week. I mean, once you have that little diamond and you popped out, you kind of thought you were at risk, and then they pull the flim flam and they get us over, right? So, and that's what I mean. Like, here's your DTL downward trend line, and they get you in the wedge, and then they pop the wedge over like you're going to be good, and then what do? They rug pull you. And it is what it is. I mean, there's not much you're going to do about it, guys. It's going to happen all the time. Now, for us today, we've been in this or trading around in it for a while, and I really like the name, but this became really clear to me. Okay, so we're popping over, starting to break, and then we got this again. And when I couldn't break this again, this 395, and now you'll remember this 395 level. Let's get rid of all of this. Go back to regular, and let's start over so that you can walk through exactly how I got there. So here you are, right? And then we're just going to go and I'm just drop that 395 so you can see exactly where I'm at. So see where this 395 is right here, and look, okay? So today we hit that again. I'm just going to use the 60-minute, right, to set the level. I can drop it to a 5 so that you can see where I'm going with this. Right? Because it's never going to be exact. Nothing's ever that easy, right? But you can see this battleground right in here, and I can drop that down and make it even more specific. Once you see that level and you see the battle, right? Resistance, tries to hold, flips, resistance, battleground, resistance, right? Here we are again. Once I saw that, I'm like, we could not break. And we've been trading it and doing okay with it quite well, actually. And then when I broke, I'm like, okay, it's time to trim. And once you start to see that, you start to see the cracks, you need to honor your process. This is number 4 on their AI list. So I'm trying to connect how to trade with their AI list just for time's sake. But if you look at this, this was clear as day. Honoring this saved me 20 points today. Now, I tried to get back in over here when it started to look like we might push over this 82, and then they just rug pulled us again. So I had a dollar stop and I got it out of the way. I'm going to say it again. You have to honor your stops. If you don't honor your stops, it's only going to take one trade to take you out of the game, period. And you're speaking to somebody that got taken out twice. Okay. And, it's been over 20 years since that happened, but it does happen. So you need to understand that, right? You need to understand that you can get crushed. Best traders in the world are doing about 60%. Okay. So if 40% of their trades, they're not selling when they're supposed to, they're going to get wiped out just like everybody else. So you see these levels right here. You can see how you're rallying, pulling back. Okay. This is pretty significant stuff, and it's definitely stuff that I would pay attention to. But this is number 4 on their list. And I don't see a reason why I have to rush into this. I love the name. I want to own it. But I don't see the reason why I need to really just get in there. Okay. Apple, we broke out. We hit a high. I'm not really falling out of bed here. This is on their list as well. This is number 5 on their AI list. And I'm giving you to them in order. Now, if you look at this, we didn't break anywhere near down like Microsoft, right? I mean, if you were to look at the RSI on this compared to where you were here, I mean, that is a completely different story, right? So if someone's saying, well, I want tech exposure right now, which way would you go? Well, you'd have to go with Apple if you really wanted to be in XLK, because you're not really breaking down as much and your RSI is hanging in there. So you'd have to lean that way. One of their plays was PANW. That was actually their 6th play out there. And I think that's a really important distinction. Now, what's funny about this is it's getting added to the S&P and it closed at 216. Now we're down $10 and it's no longer closing there, right? So it's still going in the S&P. So I think this is just a matter of time. But when you have a long red nasty bar like this, I keep saying that on purpose, that you want to be aware of that bar. And you want to make sure that you get over that bar, because this bar is what people that have been watching the channel for a little bit know that I refer to as what? That's a control bar. Okay, that bar is now in control. You don't want a red, nasty bar in control of your stock. It's not fun. CRM was one that we did extremely well with. We were up about 20 points into earnings. If we held in the earnings, our stop was 210. Stopped clearly. These kinds of reversals, you need to watch this. Now, the best thing that could happen, and it's probably not going to happen because it's rare, the best thing that could happen right here, this is number 7 on their list. I'm going to give you 9, actually. I'm going to give you one more. So you see this level right in here, right? So you have a gap now, right? So now I have a gap in the chart, and this body completely encompasses everything, okay? I have a gap in the chart, and this body encompasses everything. I need to stay out of the way. I need to stay out of the way until this sets up. Best thing that could happen is I gap up and get an island reversal. That me and hope and a bowl of soup gets me a bowl of soup, right? So this is really what you're looking for, something like this. You come down and then you gap, and then you get that island gap reversal, and you can see what it did from there. Maybe we get something like that. I don't know what kind of news could do that, but other than that, this is pretty much toast for a little bit of time. Meta is on their list. Now, I understand why it's on their list, but I think there's better names. I think it's important to look at this because you're not really breaking below that 70 yet, so I really don't have the sell trigger. And I'm still in here. I'm still up in this. So it's not completely smashed and broken yet, but major support is that 250 level. Now, AMD is 9th, and I just want to walk through this. We've seen where these are rallying up and coming back, but what didn't AMD do today, right? Well, we popped over and then we encompassed this bar. We didn't have follow through like we did on the regional banks, like we did on all of KRE, like we did on XLF, like we did on IWM. No follow through, but we popped over. This was actually a trade that we did early in the community when we do the live trades in the morning. And the great thing about this trade was not what we made from it, but following our plan, we were able to not get hurt. So right off the open, you can see the bar. Right off the open, we rip, we come back down, right? And then we rip. And then I start getting what I refer to as Wick City, where you just can't get over this level. And 1 wick, okay. Well, maybe it's they're just playing around. 2, my antenna's up. 3, at that point, it's just your fault if you're not getting out, right? It's almost like you want to hear those words from Amityville Horror, get out, right? Or maybe I'm dating myself. And then what you're seeing here is you have the peak, comes back down, you have the other peak. By the time that cracked right there, I was gone. I was completely 100% out of the trade. I actually made a very little bit of money. But by following the plan, it saved me a lot of money today. And that's what I would suggest to you. Follow your plan. So I went over 9 AI names very fast. If you want me to go over it in greater detail, just comment below. I think it'd be great to do a video on all this so that we can use it as a format going forward. And I was pretty impressed looking at Goldman's list because they had some really good ones on there that are not some of these larger cap names. And we'll go from there. Everybody have a great evening.